emphasis on their education. Everyone coming up here are well educated between master's, doctorate, etc., etc. But my focus really is, why should we listen to these persons? So Beverly, of course, has been very intimate with transitioning students. So I believe she is more than able to really speak to some of the challenges and how we can assist students to make that move. Yes? So let's welcome Beverly Ellis once again. Next, we have Dr. or Sister Barbara Constant, who is currently an assistant professor in language and linguistics, assistant professor in the language and linguistics department at UTT, at the Center of Education Programs, where she serves as the discipline leader for primary education and the postgraduate diploma in education. She obtained her teaching diploma at the Val Saints Teachers College. Now, she has been a teacher for the past 29 years, spanning the primary, secondary, and tertiary level, teaching and lecturing in English language, linguistics, English literature, and communication studies. She is also a member of the Ministry of Education Textbook Committee and serves as coordinator of its scholarship committee. She has also served as Assistant Chief Examiner in Cape Communication Studies for the Caribbean Examination Council since 2012. Another person who is well equipped, given her scope, covering, as she said, both primary school straight into tertiary education and being very intimate with students making that transition from secondary school to university education. Let us welcome Dr. Barbara Constance. We also have with us Mr. Brother Kaelan Roach. Now, Kaelan is a 20-year-old Barbadian who is in his third year at USC doing a Bachelor of Science in Biology with an emphasis on biomedical sciences. He currently serves as the Director for Social and Cultural Activities on the Associated Student Body and the I Provide leader of the I Connect ministry. He is a member of the University Choir and Orchestra and His Love Choir. In his free time, he loves to hike, go on adventures, and spend time with family and friends. Let us put our hands together for Kaelan. Is it Kaelan or Kylan? Kaelan, who, of course, being a student, can speak directly to this. I made a little faux pas here. I forgot one young lady, and I hope she forgives me. We have Talia Phillip. Talia is a 25-year-old part-time student at the University of the West Indies, where she is pursuing a BA in Communication Studies with a minor in Human Resource Management while maintaining a full-time position at a medical supplies company. Her initial career focus was medicine. However, when she realized her passion did not lie in the medical field, she took a year off from school to gain real-world experience. While at her current job, she learned of her passion for communicating with others and began her degree in communications. In pursuing this degree, Talia hopes to one day become an organizational change management professional. Let's put our hands together for Talia, well equipped again. As you can see, she is a part-time, so that brings its own challenges. Next, we have Ronaldo Stobie. Ronaldo Stobie is a first-year student at the University of the Southern Caribbean, currently majoring in computer science. He was born in the land of many waters, Guyana. However, he lives in the British Virgin Islands. He is also a member of His Love Choir and the UCO Choir, and is also a part of the Steel Band Orchestra and the university volleyball team. His hobbies include programming, reading, playing the piano, and art. Let us put our hands together for Ronaldo. Now we have Brother Elder Darren Hernandez, who himself has been an educator for the past 24 years. His journey in education began at 20, which was yesterday? Okay. Not long after he left A-levels. He has taught at Bates Memorial High School of SDA for that time, serving as Dean, Head of Department, and acting senior teacher during that time. He holds a BSc in Biology from the University of the Southern Caribbean and a certificate in teaching math methods. He applies the same passion about Christian education with his involvement in the youth ministry, and knows that the way forward for the church are its youth. Let us put our hands together for Darren Hernandez. And we have some bias clapping behind there. Next we have our speaker this morning, Dr. W. Mark Jackman, who is the Associate Professor and Program Leader for Center of Education Programs at UTT Tamina Campus. Important to note for me in particular, as I pose some questions to the panelists, is that he pursued his PhD in psychological studies in education at the University of Auckland, New Zealand, as a Commonwealth Scholar. His research interests include student achievement and motivation. Very important to note that. Dr. Jackman believes in Christian education as espoused by the Seventh-day Adventist Church as a great blessing given by God to the church and the real world. He also believes that truly understood education and redemption are one. Let us put our hands together for Dr. W. Mark Jackman. Next up, we have Elder Brother Mr. Leslie A. Hislop, who is the principal of the Caribbean Union College Secondary School since 2008. Previous to that, he was its vice principal. He was also a part-time lecturer in mathematics at USC. He was the mathematics teacher at the Sandy Grande Educational Institute, physics and integrated science teacher at Bates Memorial High School, mathematics teacher at Harmon School of SDA, as well as a teacher at the Charlottesville SDA Primary School. So another person whose experience has spanned primary school straight to tertiary school education. And being the principal of CUC Secondary School, it's clear, of course, that he would have hands-on experience in this regard. He has a number of professional affiliates, such as an ASCD member. That's formerly the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development of the Trinidad, currently now the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Private Secondary Schools. His personal milestone: he was born in 1973 in Tobago. Well, I thought Tobagonians would have said, you see, it's only Valencia people know how to support their own. Boyd, what's happening behind it? All right. So he born in 1973 in Tobago, grew up in the village of Mason Hall, attended the Mason Hall SDA Primary School and Scarborough SDA Primary School, attended Harmon School of SDA where he completed his CXC, then Signal Hill Senior Comprehensive where he completed his GSC A-levels. He completed a garment design and construction course with YTEP. All right. And he has, apart from being married, he has 2 adult children. They're adults now. 2 adult children who themselves, I'm sure, would have made that transition. He's heavily involved with the youth leader at the Sandy Grande Church, Pathfinder leader, music leadership, member of the USC concert band and choir. I do not know where I don't know where all these people find all this time to do all these things. Let us put our hands together for Elder Leslie Hislop. Nice. Rare people here today. Okay, so let me take my seat now. Okay, you can test your mics to make sure that they are working.
Check.
Testing.
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 Testing. Check.
Testing.
1, 2.
Testing.
Testing, testing.
Lovely. So what are our objectives for today? At the end of this panel discussion, we trust that those who are considering going to tertiary education or moving on to tertiary education, as well as parents and guardians, will be able to identify strategies that makes the transition from secondary school to tertiary education smoother, know and navigate the possible challenges that they may face, and determine if indeed you are ready for the change and demands of tertiary education and work. So let us get into this. We want to see how we can maximize our time so we can meet our objectives. I want to start with our students. I want to start with Ronaldo. Ronaldo, how would you describe your transition from secondary school to university? How would you describe that transition? You are a first year, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Well, my experience was quite a memorable one, and it has a lot of testimonies.
Sorry, let me just disturb you. I need for you to speak a little bit.
Okay, so
Yes, nice.
yeah, my transition period was very memorable in that it's a testimony, because it's really not easy, especially since I'm an international student. It required a lot of paperwork and finance, which I didn't really have at the time. So, and one thing I would say that would make it easier is support from parents. Now, see, I don't have the support from both my parents because one wanted me to go to United States and the other one wanted me to go to a Christian university, which is the University of Southern Caribbean. Now, personally, I wanted the opportunity to grow my character, which is why I chose the University of Southern Caribbean. However, with it came a lot of, trials that tested if I was really up to the task. And by it, I mean, one of it was after I arrived on the campus, I had to live on dorm. Now, I was expecting that, but even though it's a Christian university, there's still a lot of things that you need to be mindful of. It's not safe in terms of your religious beliefs, because there's still things that could push you away from that, right? And that is something I immediately faced, but I'm proud to say no, that my parents did a good job in keeping me grounded in my morality. So I was able to stay clear, still attend church, and read my Bible. So yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here is that even though you transitioned to the church university, that did not necessarily make it easy, as some may think. All right, so not because he went to a Seventh-day Adventist institution, that does not mean that he did not face certain challenges. Talia, what surprised you the most when transitioning to university? What surprised you the most?
The work.
I'm sorry, the work. Talia.
For me, it was the amount of free time I now had.
Okay.
So let me just start off by saying something that wasn't included is that before I started my degree in communications, I would have done the N1 program at university.
Speak a bit more into your mic.
Oh, I was saying, so one thing that I didn't have was that before starting my degree in communications, I did N1 at the University of the West Indies full-time. So I have the full-time as well as the part-time. Is it okay if I touch on both?
Yes.
So for the full-time student, what would have surprised me the most was the amount of free time that I had, where now there wasn't a bell or teachers telling me that I had to get to class at a specific time. I could do what I want if I wanted to. As a part-time student, what surprised me the most was my lack of time management and how important that actually was when you have to juggle being a full-time employee as well as keeping up with schoolwork. That was probably one of the biggest surprises.
Lovely. So you were thrust into an adulthood as a full-time student. Now you were grown. You didn't have anyone behind you. Okay. And Kaelan, if you could do the transition all over again, what would you do differently, if anything?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Well, for me, the transition from secondary school to university wasn't that hard. It was the beginning of the COVID pandemic. But what I would say, the part of the transition that was a bit of stressful was coming from online school straight back into university for the first time. No, you would have had to, you're basically living on even though you're on dorm, you're basically having to prepare your own meals, have to wake up yourself. As my colleague said, there's no one there to tell you there's a bell, you have to get to class. You have to it's basically a sense of independency. No, I would say if we could have taught persons that before going into college, that would have been a pretty good decision, because most persons had to just step right in and learn as they go. So,
lovely. Okay, so I'm now going to ask those who are in the education system, and I will start with Beverly, then Barbara, and then we'll come down to Leslie, and then Dr. Jackman. Let's discuss the possible challenges: psychological, emotional, and physical that transitioning students may face. Beverly, what are some of those challenges? And you don't need to be extensive, but what comes to your mind based on your experience?
Good afternoon, everyone. In terms of the psychological, I'll leave that for Wendell more so as the educational psychologist. But I can say from working at a university, some of these challenges that students face in terms of psychological, one would be sometimes homesickness. If you, for example, Kaelan and the gentleman from Guyana, you find that sometimes we have students who come from different islands or countries, and they long for home. Remember, they're accustomed to many times a different culture, food, etc. Or you may be a young person in Trinidad and Tobago and you go to North America or Europe, etc. to school, and you sometimes have to deal with that level of homesickness, missing having your parents there or your guardians, and sometimes having to, make new friends and navigate your way through university life, and that sometimes poses a lot of psychological challenges for students. Well, we're not dealing with recommendations yet, I assume, so I wouldn't go into like what we would recommend for that. In terms of social challenges, again, the whole idea of connecting with new people, we find that sometimes the students who live on hall, imagine having to share a room with someone that you're accustomed having your own room at home, and then you're thrust into this situation where you're living on a hall and you have to share a room. You might be a morning person, the other person is not, and then sometimes you're not getting along, and sometimes we have to play referees on campus, with students on the dorm, etc. So sometimes that whole idea of the interpersonal relationships, sometimes students have challenges where that is concerned. I'll pass on to Barbara, who could give more.
Lovely. Homesickness and connecting. Barbara?
Okay, are you hearing me clearly? All right, so I'm talking now from experience. So I think this year will be 19 years tertiary teaching, and I want to talk about, I'll start intrapersonal, as Beverly mentioned, interpersonal. I think sometimes students, I got this from students, they are not able now to, get in their minds that I am now at a different level. At the secondary school, you had your teachers there, you know who your teachers were, you had to get a class. If you didn't get a class, people, at least until I taught at sixth form government, I called parents, that was me. So people could call their parents. At the university now, there are no parents involved. We have had students who got lost in simple things like gaming, and it's not so simple anymore. Students who have plummeted into F zone because they got caught up, and this is over a few years now. Back then was Candy Crush, now we have different games. We have also the situation of what do I believe? Because I left home having this mindset, this is what I believe, and now I'm meeting people who are even in the church, and I'm seeing different habits, I'm seeing them doing different, engaging in different activities that I did not learn, as a Christian. How do I engage? How do I manage that? And sometimes you can even be ostracized for being the one who stands up for Jesus, right? I want to say, very important too, students need, and this is not just for tertiary, but students need to organize their study. Dr. Jackman has done, I think he has a book, a guide on study skills. He can talk more about that. So your study skills, how do I go about organizing now at this level? Now remember, it's a jump. Before, people went from sixth form to tertiary, and that was hard enough. Now, you're moving from fifth form. I remember teaching sixth form, and students were like, Miss, these words are so difficult. This is from fifth form to sixth form. And we had to guide them through that transition. Now there's a bigger gulf. They are going from fifth form to tertiary, and sometimes they feel lost. They feel like I can't make it. Just this morning, a parent told me, if I can talk to her daughter, she wants to drop out of her aviation program because she just can't make it. So all of these challenges, and they feel as though there's no one there for them. There's no one cares. I'm here alone. I won't even bother to go into teamwork just yet, putting them in groups to do teamwork, so I will leave it for now. right, until it comes back around.
Before Dr. Jackman goes, because I want to shape the question a little different for you, Doc. I was reading that many college students feel anxiety. So even as we speak about the possible challenges, I want to look at it from a psychological perspective and its effect on mental health.
Yes, it's interesting that you said that because Dr. Constance and I, we receive a lot of applications. And lately, I've been seeing on very many applications coming into the university when there's a question, are there any issues that you face? And anxiety. I'm like, why are 17, 16, 18-year-olds facing all this amount of anxiety? It's highly shocking. And one of the possible reasons would be that for the last couple of years, being under lockdown, this whole social interaction has been undermined, the amount of social interaction. And when you go from a secondary school of 400, 500, 600 students to a university with 4,000 or 5,000, or on a campus, you're in a class with 20, 15, according to the subjects that you're doing, students, into a university class of 100 and something students. You can feel lost, you can feel, and many universities, unlike secondary schools, where at university, oftentimes you have to come up to the front to make presentations. And you're basically on your own. And at this particular time, young people are at the peak of their identity development, their sense of who they are. So that a number of things are converging at the same time. And they more or less feel like they're going to be thrust into situations where the spotlight will be on them more than usual. So that is something that they have to begin to cope with. And whereas, as Dr. Constance said, in secondary school, even at A levels, you miss a class, your teacher running you down for notes, you miss your parents taking you for lessons here, there, and so on. At university, there are no lessons to go to. You get your course outline, you have deadlines to meet, and whereas we know all subjects have SBS now, but at secondary school, generally speaking, your little assignments in class do not really account for much per se, except you have to do your SBS and do your final your CSEC exams. At university, at each juncture, every paper that you submit counts towards your final grade. So there is this concern, and the amount of time at your disposal, as Talia said, the amount of time at your disposal, it appears as if you have a lot of time. It appears as if you have a lot of time. And I did a book on studying at university level, and it has time management. It has the whole gamut of skills that you would need to be successful at university level. And time management is one of the very early chapters. You begin with adjusting your attitude because of the transition, and then you move into time management. Because all the time that you think you have, you really don't. Because if the semester starts today, you would have a paper in about 3 weeks, then you have another assignment at midterm, then you have something else before the end of the term, and then you may have final exams. So you may have 5 or 6 critical things coming up and some students say, oh, that's a whole month away. And there they run into problems. Sorry for the long.
No. I'll come back to you in a bit. But I want to jump now to Talia. Talia, I want to put you on the spot, as I told you I would have. When it comes to anxiety, I know you have your own testimony here with this. You want to share with us what were some of your experiences in this regard? Only share as much as you would like to share. All right?
Okay. Made me feel anxious asking me that question.
No, but to put it at ease, it's much more common, as I said. It's much more common than you think. So that if you feel it's on you and like you are so special, there's a lot of persons out there feeling this, and it's not your fault that you feel this way. I think it's a lot to do with what is happening now in the world and the society at large, So don't feel,
Let me add to that, as I mentioned to her, it's not just for students.
Yeah.
Even in the workplace, especially if you're a high achiever, you can feel anxiety. I would have shared my experience. Okay, when you work in the corporate world and you have shareholder value, all the drama and persons looking down at you, anxiety is something, if you never had it before, suddenly you have it then.
Okay, so my experience is, just like you were saying, it's not something I ever had an issue with up until COVID. Yeah, it's not something I had an issue with up until COVID. So transitioning from COVID, coming back into school, that's where things got a little tricky for me. Because I was used to doing well, and a lot of things would have changed work-wise as well coming out of COVID. Sorry, it's just happening. And so now having to deal with additional responsibilities at work, entering into doing third-year courses, which way more difficult than first year and second year. I don't know what happened in between there. So having to deal with those things and not feeling as though it wasn't coming as easy as it does. School was always fairly easy for me, and so now I was dealing with the challenge of, how am I going to get this done? How am I going to do everything that I have to do at work? How am I going to do everything that I have to do at school? And so for me, that started to cause issues with me feeling anxious, so anxious that I couldn't function last semester.
Got it. So this is real. So even for parents, you heard her say that school was rather easy for her. She most likely would have breezed through, one of those bright students. Secondary school was easy. And we roll up on university thinking it's going to be as easy. And then we have a bit of a culture shock. I want to go back now to our secondary school principals. Leslie and Darren. A-levels or no A-levels? We have this thing now, we don't have to do A-levels. Does that play a part at all in preparing you for secondary school? Is it important still? What are your thoughts and your opinions for university, that is?
But before I even answer that question, let me change your introduction of me. Right? I want to include a very significant part of your introduction that I think is critical to this conversation. I have a son going into third year in university, and I have a daughter in her first year in university. So I want to go down there and sit down right now and listen to this. I want to go back and CUC right now and pick up my daughter and bring her here to listen to this conversation. I don't want to talk, I want to listen. That being said, let me answer your question. No, seriously, because we have to talk after this thing. Because I need to get a copy of that book. I know it's Sabbath, but I need to get a copy of that for my child. Because I think A-levels could be important, but what I think is more important is a child knowing what they want to do. Let me tell you why I say that. So I have, as I said, two children in university. One did A-levels, one didn't do A-levels. So I could compare the both of them. Both of them started off university in a mess. And I'm talking about high-level achievers. Because my son left secondary school with, it was 7 grade 1s and a grade 3. 7 1s and a 3, right? My daughter with 10 passes, 7, 5, what is it? 7 1s, 2 2s and a 3. Right? So me talking about no duncy head children. Right? Their mother bright. Right? So that is what they left secondary school with. And started off university. As I said, my son did A-levels, my daughter didn't do A-levels. My son wanted, when he went to do A-levels, he wanted to do engineering. So he started engineering at UE. Spent 1 semester in UE. He's a student in USC right now doing music. My child went into university to have a music degree with no music qualifications. None. He did not do one Royal School or any of those music programs. None. Not one. no music qualification, not CXC music, nothing. It had nothing to do with the fact that my cousin is the chair of the music department. Let me just put that out there, right? I just putting it out there. I'm putting it out there. He had to do a qualifying exam to get into the music program. Why? Because we were actually out of the country this summer when he was awaiting his CAPE results. And he had already applied for the engineering program. And we are having a conversation, him, myself, and one of my cousins, that we were going to shoot some hoops the night. And while we're talking, I am listening to the conversation and realizing this child really want to do engineering. No. Because on his own, he just took up this thing for music. Now let me just say, we used to send the child for music lessons when he was younger. The music tutor called my morning, he said, keep your money, right? Save your money and stop stressing me out. Know that people are being I'm a realist. We talking real talking this evening, right? Keep your money and stop stressing me out. He's not practicing. He's not practicing, right? And he don't want to, on a Sunday morning when it's time to go, like see scratching, he doing all kind of thing, not to go in music. On his own, I actually bought an instrument for him. He never picked it up. Well, I shouldn't say he picked it up once when I just bought it and that was it. This same child, on his own, decided he wanted to arrange music. So he started making arrangements for the marching band. Because he joined the marching band in Grandy, and the leader of the marching band telling us he's so good. I never heard the child play nothing yet. Home. Right? The first time I heard him play was at Sunday. I went up in church to do something, and the band was practicing. I was like, who is that? The mother heard him for the first time on a parade in a fair. That is the first time she heard him play the instrument he played. This is the very same child who started arranging music on his own and now is one of the top music students in the People University, playing everything they give him to play. Let us discover what their passion is from early. That is so important. And sometimes we have dreams about what children are supposed to be.
Yes, right.
So for both of them, I don't know if A-levels would have helped. Because A-levels could help, because there's a maturing process that takes place in that 2-year period that is critical, I think, to them understanding what the university requires. And because of the level of work that, and Barbara, this is my schoolmate from Tobago days. Well, not schoolmate, but contemporary from Pathfinders and things back in Tobago days.
Yes.
I haven't seen her yet.
This was our Pathfinder leader who carried us in the bush, yes, and had us, doing torture camps. There is no camp I've seen nowadays that matches that.
Yeah, but that 2-year transition, I think, is so critical in terms of their development that I don't think even if they don't do well in A-levels, just the fact that they spend that time for their own mental development is a critical period for them being able to make the transition to university better. That's my thought.
Beverly, let me let Darren go and then you'll go. Go ahead, Darren.
So, Mr. Hislop took some of the words out of my mouth because I was wondering if we could probably do this for our parents at the 3 secondary schools. Because
we have some connections here.
We have some parents that need to know some of this information. Mr. Hislop is right. I'm not sure if A-levels prepares our student. I can speak for myself. I did A-levels, but that was when GCE was around. So when I hit USC, I was like, this was what university was about? What's the big deal? I was like, what's the big deal about it? We find now that students leave secondary school and they go into the university arrangement. And they struggle. I mean to say they struggle real plenty because we now have this whole thing with gate and all of these things, and it's free. Now, I don't know if in my time, because of the responsibility I had, because in my first year, I would have taken a whole set of money and given the CUC. Right? So there was also the fact that, listen, you need to be sure of what you are doing. However, I want to allude to something else that we are seeing in our secondary schools, and I am seeing it more and more in my short time in administration. We are seeing students, or at least we are seeing students coming across. And what schools have a tendency to do now is that we teach to the exam. So pass paper to the exam. Pass paper, pass paper, pass paper, pass paper, pass paper. We do not teach our students to think critically, to do research, to sit down. So for example, next to my wife is one of my biology students. She will tell you how I run my biology class. My moderators come in and they say, Mr. Hernandez, why are you making your students write background? Because these are the very same students going to hit university and have to write an abstract. So let them do the extra work now. I want them to know how to do it, what to understand. This is the research that they have to do. So we have students coming across from that we're seeing in a lot of these schools where we teach past paper, but we do not teach them how to think, how to research, how to work to their style or their learning style. And Mr. Hislop said something very important. We often push our children to do what we want them to do, and not what they are good at, what they are passionate about, or what they naturally have a knack for. So our child comes home and they are very good naturally at art or music or whatever, they're gifted in that area. But the neighbor next door is a doctor, so I would like my child to be a doctor. Good? And I'm not sure if it's still going on with parents now. I can give you my example. At the age of 20-something, early 30s, I realized I had a knack behind the camera. I'm very good at photography. I understand lighting ratios, all of these things like that. And my mother looked at me and said, photography don't really make no money. Little did she know. So there are some days I roll out of bed on a Sunday morning and be like, okay, yeah, time to make money. Because we discourage children and we fail to understand that there are certain fields that are opening up, a lot of fields in art, in drama, in music, and we try to funnel our children into the traditional fields, failing to understand that all of these fields are needed and they are necessary. So Mr. Hislop is right. Yes, I'm not exactly sure if A-levels actually prepares our students, and that's simply because of how we teach now. We teach to the exam and not to teach our students to think critically.
Yes.
If our education system was designed to get our students to think critically, then no problem.
Thank you. So Beverly, I'm going to pose a question to you that you can add to what you may have been going to say possibly on A-levels. And Darren would have touched on it. With GATE, everybody and the mother could do university. As opposed to my time when you had to decide whether or not you really wanted to fork out thousands of dollars. It seems now that because it's free or it's now partially free, and in many cases you don't have to do A-levels, we have a different profile of students. Is this affecting the transition? If so, how?
All right, so I teach a class called College Success and Career Planning on campus. And strange enough, one of the questions that we give, one of the assignments that students are given is about what is this degree worth and how much is it costing, and if you had to pay for it yourself, like for those who are getting scholarships, whether they're from another island and they're getting a scholarship through their government, etc., or with GATE, would you still do it? And you'd be surprised how many students say no, they would not. They would not go to university if they weren't getting GATE, as in particular, because the majority of our students currently on campus are commuters and students from Trinidad and Tobago accessing some percentage of GATE. And we find that over the years, with the increased access, that whole massification in higher ed, where like in Trinidad with the GATE, we find it has sort of watered down the whole tertiary education in a sense that the quality of students that we recruit, that we get sometimes, they are really, some people just should not be doing degrees. They're not, and I mean, I'm not here being prejudiced, but you see it, you see what you get, and you realize some students are just not committed. And I remember one of my friends, he said that, it's as though university in Trinidad has become like, a babysitting camp sometimes, because the students really are not equipped. And another challenge we have with the increased access like GATE, we find we have a lot of first generation students attending university. And if you're first gen, then you need more support, because the research shows that students who, first generation simply means that you are the first in your generation to go to university. So your parents did not attend university, and therefore you need more support. Bottom line, and we find many times the students are not getting that support. Sometimes I have students telling me they can't come to school because even though they're getting GATE, but they don't even have money to pay the registration fee or to travel from Matura to Maracas or to UE or to wherever they have to go to. So students really need a lot of support. And I think when the government decided to give this ease of access through GATE, that some of the things universities needed to think about is what additional support services would we need to put in place to help our students keep their GPAs up, because we find sometimes the same students cannot access GATE because their GPA, their grade point average, falls below 2.2, and therefore the government stops paying for them. So students do need a lot of support. And before I go on, I just wanted to touch back on the whole concept of career awareness. Mr. Hislop was talking about his son switching, and we find that when, especially parents, and I'm putting this plug out there for parents, you really need to let your child do a self-directed search or something. Let them go and research like Holland's theory, etc., and help your child come up with what they really want to do. I mean, you have like Dr. Jackman, as I said, Wendell, I'm advertising for you here. Education, talk to like someone into educational psychology and let them help your child choose what they want. Children need to discover who they are before we just push them to doing this and that degree, because many times, because I also do GPA monitoring on campus, and you find that you have students with 1.44 GPA because they're just not coping well. And when I talk to them, they say, this is not what I am interested in, but sometimes this is what my parents want me to do. And sometimes I will sit with them and help them transfer to another degree that they're more passionate about. So we really need to let our young people discover themselves and choose for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So far, so good, audience? All right, we're going to get into the solutions in a bit.
Before you go on,
right, just now I'm going to pose a question and you're going to answer, because it's going to link with this. Who should not go to university?
Okay.
Who
Before
should not
I
go?
go to who should not go, probably those who are not qualified and who don't want to go. But let me say, there's a point that we have not really focused directly on it, but very important in all of this is the role of the parents.
Well, I haven't reached the parents
Right?
as yet. I'll be
And
there
why I'm
soon.
saying that, I worked for a few years as doing ethics and communications with the chemical engineering faculty. And those students, it's just like they never take more than 45. So it's like 38 to 45 students. It's a classroom of highly driven. Sometimes the class starts at 8. Which university class starts at 8? That class used to start at 8. I bounce in and the students are there. I had the students who I had to speak to, and again, this is the primary and secondary part of me where I can't help but intervene. I had a couple students from Jamaica, and why? They were staying in Canada Hall. They don't have their parents there, and I would be like, I had to tell, why are you coming to class late? I spoke to him after class. I said, look around you. I said, everybody else is performing at this level. I'm sure you came here because you have the ability. So everywhere he saw me after that, hi auntie, all around the campus. He upped his game. And sometimes there's no one there. Dr. Jackman spoke about Aristotle, Socrates, and even God in the garden. I had up to this week my foundation writing class where they're doing academic writing. There is a concept in writing, for example, called intervention writing, where you take the student's hand and you lead them until you can give them more of the responsibility. And you go through that with each student. People might say this is university, but even at that level, the students need guidance. They hadn't done that kind of writing before, right? So I know, I see it as assistant chief for Com Studies. Every sixth form student has to do Com Studies. I see some of the top schools, we see the same essay 6 times, which means they are churning out, robots. And unfortunately, because some of them, you can see in their potential to be top students. So we have to address certain things like pedagogy at the secondary school level, because the students are not teaching themselves, we are teaching them. So we are the ones to guide them into critical thinking, right? So we have to check that. And I remember speaking also, when you get a 1 or 2 in communication studies at UB, you don't do foundation English, you go straight to research writing. You know about that? I am seeing some of these people in research writing, and I said to them, listen to me. I have seen thousands of communication studies essays. I know you are better than this. I said, do not come to university now and just slack off. And you see them perk up. Oh, Miss knows something. Because many of them figure, well, I am here now, I can relax. This is the cool scene. They see university and television, and on television, university, you hang out, you have the cool club, you go to this, what is Alpha, Beta, Max? All these societies, right? So they figure they're in TV. This is the real world. So a lot of it is support from the home, support from the faculty, and the truth is, a lot of the faculty, we have a kind of hands-off approach. They are adults, but I don't know. I think if we take that approach where, yes, each one is important, we can do our bit. We can still talk to students whom we see slacking off. We don't leave them because they figure that's a university student. So we also have a role to play. Who shouldn't be at university? If you know you didn't qualify, and of course, if you didn't qualify, you will have problems. If you can't walk with the footmen, then you can't run with the horsemen, right? And if you don't have the passion for it, and sometimes we are human beings. These children are still, before 25, there are many things going on psychologically, a lot of growth going on. I may decide today I want to be, a pilot, and tomorrow I want to be a chef, right? So we want to give them some space, give people some space to be. I know Dr. Rana's face, like a senior daughter in the future. I just said, okay, you better not come and tell me that you want to be a chef after here in the aviation.
Anything you want to be.
Yeah, but we we really have to be as a Jesus to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, you know, Barbara, I'm not too sure you are the right standard for lecturers, because you have always taken, Barbara is my friend for 100 years, and she has always taken a different interest than the average teacher. And she could give you stories. But the fact is that the average teacher, not, okay, you don't want to hand it in, don't hand it in, that is your business, right? Okay, I want to ask a somewhat controversial question. I'm not going to ask any one person who want to take the mic. Somebody please answer. Is there an ethnic disparity in how well a student may transition? So you spoke about parents, and there may be the perception that given the structure of certain races, they may provide a different type of support. So especially those in the university, administration, etc., is there any truth to that? Do we see any disparity or any differences between the races in how well one student over another may transition? Barbara not even looking at the mic, but I trust that somebody will answer me. That's a good question. Thank you.
Well,
The psychologist.
I think it's very clear in Trinidad and Tobago that the East Indian community takes education very, very seriously.
Say that one more time, a little louder and clearer. Right.
And I wondered as to why. And one of the things that I found out is that in Hinduism, and not all East Indians are not Hindus, in Hinduism, education is perceived as part of their religious responsibility from the cradle to the grave. I never knew that. Just as important as is making money and business. That is part of their religious beliefs and religious teachings. Right? And you know, Muslims, they also take their education very seriously. I remember as a young boy going to Port of Spain General Hospital, and the names of doctors were written on the ground, and you would never see any other name except an East Indian name or a Chinese name, or probably, you know, and then if you were in the Port of Spain General Hospital and you saw a Negro doctor, usually is African. Yeah, Nigerian or so on. And what they have discovered about Nigerians is that they have what is called a superiority complex. Nigerians, anywhere in the world you go, Nigerians are doctors, lawyers, engineers, top businessmen and women. Because they believe, and we, Shadal and I, my daughter, we used to play tennis, and they were a Nigerian couple. And the father was, I think, a psychiatrist and so on. And their belief is that they deserve to be on top, and they have the intelligence to be on top, and they have the ability, so they only choose the highest level of professions. Right? So within the East Indian community, there is this drive, there is this notion to just to do your best and to be the best that you can be, and there's a lot of support mechanisms. So they would start from, if you're teaching children who are East Indian, you're going to get gifts.
Yes.
The parents, I have a number of, at UTT, I have a number of mugs,
yes,
postcards, etc. And 99.9% it's from.
Yes.
They come, right? So that's a very clear phenomenon. That
what is the lesson from that immediately for this congregation here, who is made up of non-East Indians?
So,
what can we learn?
Africans more or less look at what is going to bring in $1 at the fastest possible time.
Yes.
So when Professor Joseph and I did research, we went out in the communities and we were asking young men why they're not going back to tertiary school after secondary. They say, well, sir, You have that money in your pocket, them girls, they want to hear nothing, you know. You have to take them out, you want to buy this and buy that for them. So they prefer, and they say,
They don't know about
how long you have to be in
gratification.
school? 3 years, 4 years? Oh, they don't want to be in school for that extended period of time to get anything. It's too much time spending in school. I could go and do a little course and pick up something. I could get a little job transporting things on, etc., on a truck
Quick
and
as
so
the
on.
word.
Stress-free. A hustle, a stress-free life. So there are there are African, Afro-Trinidadian families who would push the education and push for their children to reach as far as possible and so on. But that divide is very, very, very clear.
Can I add something to that? I think this transfers across to the university life. At the secondary school level, at least from what I have seen, students where the home is stable, mother and father are stable, there is support right through, meaning that sports day, mommy and daddy there. Every single event, mommy and daddy is there. What we find, those students, whether they be East Indian, Afro-Trinidadian, good, Chinese, Caucasian, whatever, they will do well and they will always excel. What we are finding now, I'm not sure, probably one of the panel could help me out on this, I haven't done the research on that. We have a lot of broken homes and single parent homes. I suspect it could be a lot more in the Afro-Trinidadian families, and that is wreaking havoc. Because mommy is fighting to grow this child up, child leaves school, mommy is working, child is thinking, well, I can't go to university because I have to help mommy. Good? Whereas with the East Indian child, there isn't that amount of pressure to say, well, as soon as I leave school, I have to get a job. So our Afro-Trinidadian students, as soon as we leave school, we have to get a job. Good? I mean, I can see everybody's case is a bit different. In my case, when I left school with the understanding, my original intention, we say, man plan, God laughs. My original intention, my students asked me one day, what did you want to be? I said at first when I was growing up, I wanted to be a fireman. Because I found that firemen did nothing whole day and they play football whole day. And they play football whole day and they got paid. Right? At least that's what I saw in San Grande Fire Station. Sorry. And while I was doing A-levels, that was in the 1998, 1999, that period, the plan was, listen, you need to get a scholarship to go to do marine biology in the States. So that was the vision, that was just there. Good? But then I had to come back down to it and realize, okay, I'm coming from humble beginnings. And I can say this now, I grew up in a house that was probably a quarter of that, half of that section there. Good? So in the back of my mind, okay, I can't go to university outside because my parents just don't have the resources and it's going to take too long. So what's the next best thing? I'm saying that sometimes some of our students start at a disadvantage. They do. And it would seem, I could be wrong, it would seem that the East Indian community, that disadvantage is not there. Doesn't mean to say that our Afro-Trinidadian students can't do it. Yes, they can. They need a lot more support, however, in getting to that particular place. So I often quote my students, I often tell my students, as a friend of mine, we went to school together, Sean Rick Stoll. Sean Rick is a double doctorate. Jean-Rick and I sat in the same class together. Went to my wife's former church. Brilliant guy. Good? Great? And I often hold him up as one of the examples. Listen, you can do this. Jean-Rick went to La Hoqueta. Well, both parents, but still, it was difficult for them. And he did it. If he can do it, and I can make it out of there, then you can do it too.
Okay. Dr. Jackman, I saw an expression in your face when Darren said something. Is there something else you want to add? Something he said along the lines of possibly that the East Indians may not face certain challenges.
Yeah,
I saw a particular expression.
Yeah, they do have their challenges, but they have... Now, research shows that students of the Far East orientation, they have, how you put this, a lower level of self-ideation as far as educational accomplishment is concerned, which is weird. Asians have what is called a lower self-concept in terms of their academic performance. So what do? They work harder. Whereas if you have a low, if you think, well, I'm not so good at math, or one thing is that I ain't gonna try. They do the opposite. They go 100, say, okay, I don't feel this, so, and what they do so that they this level of stick-to-itiveness and this, they may not be as bright as other races or other groups, but they're going to work and work and work and sacrifice to get where they want to go. You might know how much courses, how much time they fail a course, but you'll see when they graduate. But we give up. As soon as we face certain obstacles and so on and challenges, and they have things in place. Like we often wonder, how come Asians are so... I mean, I went to Diego Martin Government Secondary, and there was one Asian boy in my class, Gary Chang, and he was the brightest in math, maths, physics, and everything. Having done doctorate studies and so on, they found out that Asians, when their children come home, they have extra books for them to do maths work, extra science, outside of what is done in the class. This is not lessons now. They have them, so they automatically, they will excel in those areas, math and science, and well, they're taking over tech now. So that when he said that, I know they have issues. I know they have struggles. I know sometimes there are guys who finish engineering degrees and carry it and throw it. It's Indian guys and throw it for their parents and say, look, I do a degree. Let me go and do what I want for myself. No, there is that as well. It might be a small percent, but there is that as well. So that they have their issues, but they push, and that kind of doggedness and that kind of desire to achieve. And Dr. Constance will tell you about that. No matter how they struggle, they keep going. But once we hit a wall, we say, boy, I can't deal with that now. And the parents say, boy, your head not for book. Go and find something to do. Or say, write this one and learn a little trade or something. We minimize the other things that they can do that they possibly excel in.
Okay, before you go, Ronaldo needs to leave. So I know he needs to make up.
Well, let me say, now this kind of program, you need to have this on Sabbath morning, huh?
Pardon me?
This is not for when you have a few, this is for the whole church on a Sabbath morning from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. This is the kind of plan, because the people you want to affect, the young people that you need to affect and infect with this, they are not here. This is from 10, this is more important than a man getting up and preach a sermon for 20 minutes. Because this is their life you're talking about. This is their career and their whole life, and there's the life of the church in the future you're talking about.
Thank you so much. And I see that the audience appreciates this. Yes,
okay,
Ronaldo.
now, before I leave, I would like to
But
actually...
speak in the mic a little better, please.
Okay, so before I leave, I actually like to make some of my perspective on that controversial topic. Now, well, I would like to approach it in a psychological perspective, a religious and cultural, and also adding to some of the things he noted. So let us begin with the psychological here. So one of the theories, I think it's from Abraham Maslow, exactly, psychologist here. So he speaks about self-actualization, right? And this chart I'm looking at, see, he says we need some basic needs in order to self-actualize or accomplish our goals. One of the things he said here is we need basic food and water, or basic needs, then security, right? Safety and security, a peace of mind. Family, so we need love, right? A feeling of belongingness. self-esteem, right? We need to feel like we can accomplish something. And then he's saying that self-actualization, meaning we could actually accept facts. We have our own open mind and we can be more creative. Okay? Now, while I would say that I wouldn't totally agree with this theory, I do think that it is necessary to have those things, as it will greatly aid you to accomplish these goals. You can become a doctor. It will make it easier if you have support from your family and you have your basic needs taken care of. However, I don't think if you lack some of these things, you can't accomplish it. The idea of believing that there is a limitation is something I strongly disagree with, totally. Because there are people who don't have much, but after they realize that, I need to get, right? They worked, right? And that's the thing. Making excuses saying that I don't have this, so I can't do this, is something we need to understand. It's not even Christian. Because if you believe you have God, then you don't need, because
Amen.
God will provide, right? So on my, religious perspective, I think you need to understand, we need to look at the parents, because I believe, because I have religious parents, and even though they were strict with me and sometimes I didn't like it, right? I believe that what they taught me helped me to stay focused. If I experienced something that was colorism or racist, well, I don't think it would affect me because I understand who I am and my purpose, right? And another thing, the cultural, I agree, because if you're still on the same side of parents, most of the parents in the African descendants or Asian, what they do is they condition they teach their young, right, what it is that they have to do, who they are, right? So they actually get a perspective. They're more self-aware, right? If you have these things, then there's nothing stopping you from making it in this world, right? So that is my thing.
Okay, before we continue, I want us to acknowledge the close of the Sabbath. So I'm going to ask Elder Hislop to just offer a word of prayer as we recognize the close of the Sabbath.
Spirit Father, we thank you for the time set aside for us to be with you, your holy Sabbath that would have just ended. Even as we continue the conversation, may we recognize that what we do on Sabbath is about life all the time. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Now, I know that the panelists has some things to contribute to what we have been discussing. We have both Darren and Kaelan. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Before we get into your views, I'm going to throw out a question because I need for us to get into solutions. So I will pose a question and you can feel free to contribute your thoughts on another matter as we look at the question. Talia, you need to leave also? Okay?
Is it okay if just for a second I touch on what we were just speaking about with regarding the racial disparity?
Pardon me?
Is it okay if I just touch a bit more on the racial disparity and education? Is
Not
it okay?
right now. You're going to touch on it when I pose a question to you in a bit
Okay.
first, and then you could. So we need to try to wrap up in the next 15 minutes or so, okay? All right, so I will go to you first to give you that opportunity. So you're going to answer both questions as best as you can. So, did any aspect of secondary school help you prepare for this transition? While you consider this disparity, you can start there and you can go into answer the question or vice versa.
Okay, no problem. So given the lack of time, I'll just wrap it up. So from an intercultural perspective, when I think about race, I think about things like our country previously being a colonized country. And so what you see happening a lot in previously colonized countries are things where you see that difference between the African, so slavery, and then indentureship. You see that there's still within the African communities that there are certain things that are passed down culturally that we don't even realize are passed on culturally, and you see those things reflected even in the education system, where you have indentureship, which wasn't as brutal as slavery, and even in the way that it would have ended would play a large role on the way that the Indo-Trinidadian population thinks about education and progressing and versus the Afro-Trinidadian society. I just wanted to touch on that.
Thank you.
Also, and then moving over to your question, I definitely think that for me personally, Form 6 played a large role in me preparing for university. A lot of the time my teachers would say, y'all, we actually just making this a little bit more difficult for y'all because we want y'all to be able to cope when you get to university. And so within Form 6, I felt as though as they placed a lot of stress on what it takes for you to achieve in society, but this is just my experience. But that's something that they would have stressed. And so when I would have actually initially gone through the transition, it was a lot easier for me because I felt as though you had new things happening, the workload in itself was something that it was a bit more manageable coming out of that.
Thank you. Leslie, what should be done? Well, what is done, or what should be done, or what can be done at the secondary school level to prepare students for this transition?
Well, as I said earlier, I told Dr. Jackman that we need to talk because the reality, and I like what he just said, this needs to happen on a Sabbath morning. This is not something that should just be for a few people who came back out in the afternoon because, they had to come and support the boy, you know what I mean? Or, you're coming with the family kind of thing. This needs to be an intentional conversation that needs to happen on a Sabbath morning, and not just a Sabbath morning. I think the time has gone when this education week that we have some prepared sermons coming out. My vice principal telling me this morning, they asked him to preach, to do the education week message in South. And he said, but it's you who write the message? When I watch the message, I say, but some years ago I give them that. No, I preached in Aruka Church this morning because the school went to Aruka Church this morning. And one of the points I was making to them there, the message was sacrificial love. We have to identify in the first instance what our education system was created for in the first place. And I was glad when you said just now that part of the culture of Hinduism is education. That is part of our culture as Seventh-day Adventists too.
Amen.
You understand? Well, look at that. Look at that. Right? You know what I'm saying? That is part of our culture as Seventh-day Adventists. And the time has come when we need to step up to the plate and stop playing games with education. We need to step up and realize that God expects us to be the best. So the conversation needs to be in the home, in the school, and in the church. And I was saying to them this morning, the church is supplemental to the home. And if we're talking about broken homes, this is where the gap's supposed to be filled for the broken homes in the church. It can't be a compartmentalized thing that we're doing in the school that does not also echo in the halls of the church. The church supposed to be spearheading programs, support, initiatives to put structures in place where our families recognize that God expects us to be the head and not the tail. And the time has come where we need to stop making excuses as to why we can't do this and why we can't do that, and be sacrificial about our education system. If it has to be good, we have to put in what is required for it to be what it should be. The structure. Now, I'm not really responsible for Form 5 retreat by me. That is the chaplaincy program. But I don't know already. I go in and let them know, here it is going on. We have some things we need to change because this, what we talk here just now, has to become a set part of our conversation with our fifth form students when we're doing Form 5 retreat. That transition, and the parents as well, that transition from secondary school to university. I tell you, I want, as soon as this thing started, I wanted to go up the road and pick up my child and bring she back down here. No, I'm very serious about that because we having a conversation. Look at mother right there, so she could testify to this. We having a conversation, girl, this is not your potential. What is going on with you? Why your head not where it's supposed to be? But I understand what is going on. She ain't ready yet. The level of maturity that she is at now, I went into university when I was done working for how much years? I taught for 3 years, then went up to university. So my thinking was different. I went to work not to get money for things. I went to work to get money so I could pay my school fees for university. That's what I went to work for. It didn't make the first year, but I mean, I never stopped university and I never owed them. Right? Because I continued working even while I was there. That is the kinds that we have to set these structures, because it have children who could go straight from secondary school to university. It have those who need that kind of time frame to really, make that. My children grow up soft. I know that. I know that. Them grow up soft. And Barbara, them grow up soft. They didn't get the boot camp thing we get. Right? When I was finished in school on an evening, I used to go in the bush with my father. My children never know nothing about that. Right? Them ain't know nothing about that. Right? Them grow up soft. I trying to give them everything I didn't have. I'm wrong for that. I'm wrong for that. I'm not supposed to do that. So we have to put these structures in place where we provide these systems and the support at the school and at the church and educate our children and our parents so that as Seventh-day Adventist people, whether we be black, Indian, Chinese, whoever, our level of achievement going to be different.
Now, the mics by plenty people out there, but on a time frame. So I'm going to ask another question, and as you answer, you can bring in your answer. Let's talk to parents now, because you're right. I said to mamsy, children who don't know how to do, all they know how to do is to study. They can't do chores and study. They can't sweep the house and study. All they can do is study. What can parents do to assist their children in transitioning? Open forum.
Let them be responsible. We have a lot of children who have no idea of what responsibility is. They are literally given everything. And I can say that personally because I have a younger brother who has been given everything and gives the most amount of trouble. So my other brother and I often say, but we didn't have all these things because he got it easy. So we have children. Our children, Seventh-day Adventist children, I want to say, many of them have been given things on a silver platter. As Mr. Hislop said, I started teaching. Well, yes, I love teaching now, but I taught really to pay school fees because at the end of the day, I was leaving school at 2, flying down to CUC. My teachers used to wonder how fast I was driving. Them days didn't have radar guns, so, right, I have no police here. Reach class for 3, leave campus 9 o'clock in the night, reach home 10 o'clock, good? Go and sleep, wake up 2 o'clock, study till 6, and do the same thing all over again. We have children who have been given everything. Now, while yes, we want to give our children things, it brings me back, and Hislop kind of alluded to it, to something that I heard one doctor spoke about called generational wealth. And in our churches, what we don't teach our children is that, okay, if I grew up like this, then you should have this. So in other words, you should aim to do better. And then you can do this and let your children do better than this. Because he said, listen, people like Oprah, those are the flukes, the generation, those are those who become millionaires in one generation. Those are outliers. We are not the white people. We didn't start with, because the whites built up generation and money and education and all of these things over generations. We are refusing to show, and listen, let me tell you something, that's a biblical principle, that we are failing to understand, to teach our children, okay, listen, I may not have this, I may not have had the best education, but you need to do better than me. I can't give you $1 million, but get this. And then you teach your children how to move on. And in other words, we teach our children how to do things. Be responsible, because if they're responsible, then they will not do like Jacob and Esau. Remember, one of the brothers sold his birthright for a pot of peas. Okay, and I end there.
Okay, Beverly, let me just add also to you to contribute to this. Based on what he said, we want our children to do better, and we should do that. But sometimes in wanting them to do better, we feel that they must have it easier. And therefore, there's that challenge now in balancing, okay, so they have to study, they have to focus on books. So they can't go in the bush and feed no chicken. They can't do none of that.
Nothing is wrong with
Beverly?
that.
Pardon?
I don't think anything is wrong with that, personally.
You don't? Okay, we have a student who don't think anything wrong with that. Beverly, go ahead first.
All right, so I'm trying to figure out in my few minutes. I just want to go back before I answer that. When you were talking about the East Indians, the racial disparity in how students do, there was a research that was done by a professor at the University of Berkeley. He wanted to know why the black students were failing and the Asian students were doing so well in his class. And when he did the research, what he realized was that the Asians were studying in groups, right? And so we find, and I want to even talk about that in terms of the East Indians and their collectivistic culture, right? So, it's like they really believe in that whole village mentality. So, say Wendell, Leslie and you all are family, you all are cousins, and she is your niece or whatever, and she wants to go to school. And so we all chip in, and we send her away to school because we believe she will come back and help the other generation. So, I'm just thinking, even within the church as members, you might have money and you can assist a child to go on, one of your own from your church, to go and get tertiary education or whatever, they want to do to be more successful in society. So we really need to build a stronger church and a stronger society. So that's an aside. And in terms of the parents, what can you do? What we have found on campus, we have a spirit of entitlement among our Generation Z, and Generation Alpha is even worse, right? So it's a sense of entitlement. So the students come and they think that I deserve this grade. Who are you? They talk down to you as a lecturer sometimes. Who are you to give me a C in this class? When really they deserve an F+. But you had a little mercy on them and gave them a C because they're not doing their assignments, they're not, but so it's a generation of entitlement that we find. And we enable it as parents too because we want our children to have a better life than the one we had. But we have to balance it because the research shows that students who engage in more than the classroom work, co-curricular and Ellen White talks about all these things in the education. We have the guideline in her book too. And don't feel the other races and the other religions not reading the education book and benefited from it and understanding the whole concept of holistic development, right? So we're supposed to be helping our children develop the head, the heart, right? So it's not just about the academic and studying. You have to balance because the world of work, the employers are also realizing that sometimes a student comes out of university, they may have graduated, they graduated with honors, however, they don't have the social skills to survive in the workplace. They lack all those, what we tend to call soft skills. They have a low degree of emotional intelligence, etc. And all these skills are gained by the different things you do around the house and the different groups that you belong to, whether it's master guides, pathfinders, other things. All these things help you to be more balanced. So involvement in extracurricular and co-curricular activities matter. So parents, you're doing your children a disservice when you just have them stick up on their book and doing nothing more.
This is where I can add 1 cent. Being a manager in the corporate world, I can tell you it is challenging to deal with these bright, unintelligent workers. They come to the workplace, Sam, they come to the workplace with their degrees and They can't write properly. They can't talk properly. Melt down somebody. If you don't talk to them a particular sweet way, they want to pass out. They're entitled. They cannot do more than one thing at a time. These are persons with what upper class honors and all kind of drama, and they really are of little use in the workplace. They're bright, unintelligent,
and they
students.
lack, basic etiquette skills and deportment skills. So these are things that we may think not important, but
that is
they
correct.
are.
Basic etiquette. Okay? All right. As we wrap up, I'm going to pose a question that everyone will answer, and you're going to add all your contributions here. What needs to be done to prepare students psychologically, emotionally, and physically to succeed at university, at college, and by extension, at the workplace? We're going to start from anyone who wants to answer, who wants to go first. You go right ahead, and everyone will contribute here.
Okay, so let me just wrap up quickly. So, one of the things that they've also discovered is that, we have a problem with male underperformance. Yes, but what they have discovered is that males who succeed, many of them have a religious orientation. Males who succeed, many of them have a religious orientation. They didn't identify which religion, but they have that religion undergirding their thing. So we're in a good place. We're in the best place. We're just not exploiting it as we should, right? It is important for parents to make sure that their children from teenage coming up have a personal relationship with God. Before you come out of family worship, go in your room and pray and talk to God and study a lesson and whatever, and then you come out to worship. Family worship is not a personal relationship with God. They're just a collective group worshiping. And if they do that, then when it comes time to choice, career, boyfriend, girlfriend, they know who to go to. They will come to you for advice, but your first thing you have to say, well, you have to go and talk to God. He would never guide you wrong. You will see things falling in place in a certain way. You will see things working out. Providence will start to work, and you'll see that, you went to sign up for this, but they say it's full, and you're going in this direction. God will work out something for you. You try and get through this year. Don't worry. So that is most important, because I could advise, a psychologist anybody could advise, and it might be the wrong advice for that particular person. It might be good advice, but it might not be for them, because God's seeing something deeper inside of them. Like Mr. Islop's son, he saw the music planted. David's father didn't know he could be playing for Saul. David's father didn't know he was going to write 150 psalms. Well, he didn't write all the psalms. David's father didn't even know that he had a son who was out. He didn't remember him. He didn't remember he had 8 sons. Who? David? He out there with the sheep. He? So that he was the one that was anointed to be appointed to be anointed, but nobody knew, because God saw what was inside of him, a man after his own heart. So it's only when they connect with God, they will be able to know direction. I ended up doing a degree in English and behavioral science. But as I sit here and I reflect now, I remember in Form 1, I became a Seventh-day Adventist when I left school. I remember in Form 1 in Diego Martin Secondary, we had to write short stories. And I wrote a short story like about 15 minutes after thing before. Hey, you didn't write a short. Miss go and pick it up. And Miss called up people to read, and she called me to read. She told me I got that from a book. The English, she just said, what you read, you got that from a book. In Form 5, we had speeches to do for English. So I didn't remember, never remember. And we had English after break. And I wrote a speech in 5 minutes, and when I finished, the class was clapping. And I want to know, what they're talking about, what they're clapping about. So I started to connect the dots now, that all that was God's providence showing. This is something that I have given you that is special. It's a special gift. So when you connect with God, He reveals things and things work out in a certain way, and we don't need anybody guidance. And they will choose the thing, and they will choose the correct path, and they will go in a particular way. Last story. This young man, we had a reunion after some years in Digosec, and this young man who was the woodwork, he was Form 3 when we were in Form 5, the woodwork teacher's son. He came back. He came back driving the highest level class Jeep. You know the Jeep? Jeep? Yes. And everybody was like, what he doing driving that Jeep? Where he get money from? He wasn't the brightest spark. So, when he said, so where you live and thing? One woodwork place. Excuse me?
Excuse you.
The guy was the president of the Art Society of Trinidad and Tobago. The young man, he said when he left school, he left with no passes. He went to the States, and there's one difference between us and the States. You desire photography, you desire art, you can make it out. There's some avenues for you to make it all the way. Here is not so, because not all the time you can put a bread on the table with certain professions. So certain things you had to take it at the side, have a mainstay profession, but he says not so. He said he went to community college, and they put him on a reading program. The fellow was doing art. If you ever, when you go home, check for Time magazine, Obama's face in a kind of a collage. Yes. He did that. Wow. Garth Gardner. He did a collage of Obama's face for the cover of Time magazine. And he started here without a single, he left school without a single part. And he was the most kind of nerdy, kind of mousy kind of thing. But he was able to get wings, and he was able to take off. And he's doing art galleries, presentations in Germany and all that, calling him up, paying for him to come up to do art exhibitions and so on. What's the point? The point is that God knows what He has placed inside of all our children, gifts and talents and skills and abilities, and we have to give them the avenues to connect with God and be able to see God working in their lives, so that the choices that they make would be choices that they're following after God. Yes, they will make mistakes. Everything is not going to be work out perfect for them. But by and large, if they feel and they know God is present with them, they set, what parents help them to set goals. Okay, you want to do so and so and so. Do not link your personal identification with your performance. So don't feel bad if you fail a course. Millions of people has failed a course. The doctor you go to, you know how much course he failed? You go into a doctor and so on, you don't know how much course that man failed. You only see a certificate on the wall, you don't know how much time he repeat a course. My daughter, there's a doctor, she failed no course. But you understand the point I'm making? Sometimes we internalize things that we should not internalize. You just fail a course, that ain't nothing. What you have to do now, look and say, okay, what is my weakness? Is it I don't understand math, I don't understand this? What is the weakness? Analyze. I always tell my daughter, she gets in 80s, 90s, Dad, look, I get 70-something, and there's Mr. Islam. I say, but, okay, all right, you're worried about it. Let's see why you're getting 70-something. Where you're going wrong? And once you see where you're going wrong, you just know how to correct it. So failure is not a problem. Don't make that a problem. If you feel like that is nothing. That is not who you are. We are children of God. Right? And regardless if you pass your failure, you're still a child of God. You understand? So, anyway, let me stop. Let me give somebody else a chance.
Thank you, Dr. Jackman. Wow. Next.
I have nothing to say after that. So that is my answer. I good. No, I good. What we going to add to that? I good. That is my answer.
All right. I just want to point out a few things. Leslie spoke about when the home disintegrates, when there are cracks in the home, really the church should be there. And we have a lot of young people, and these are the people I really want to focus on. And when I say young, I'm looking at 30 and under. Now, anybody remember me growing up in church? We were like the wild children running around the church, because our parents, well, my parents were in Venezuela. We were living with uncles, grandmother, aunts, whatever. But when we came here, and now we weren't happy to come here. That was the day there was man from Atlantis, Yeah, yeah, all the cartoons on Saturday, and then Sister Bazi came by our home. Can the children come to church? Be like, what does she? Why she coming to bother us? This is our best day home. This is our fun day. So we started coming here, and you know, you think back to people like Sister Pierre. Well, Sister Pierre took to my brother and me, you know, and I remembered her giving us messages to young people, and I remembered her, you know, just being very much a mother figure, Sister Pierre, Sister Bazi, Sister Anaya, etc. And so immediately there was no home support. And I remembered, you know, you just naturally picked up on things in school. I didn't do A-levels. I went back to Venezuela, decided to come back to Trinidad. Went in as a trainee in the bank. Went in June. In August, I got a contract. In September, I was permanent. I was just an eager beaver working, and, well, Leslie knows, I just a kind of happy-go-lucky child. When I got into teachers' college, of course, there are people with their sixth form and people who had gone to university before. I heard that the guy the year before me got 7 distinctions. While everybody is just in orientation, listening to other things, I blanked out everything else. I said, if he got 7, I will get 8. Amen. No, I said that, and I started to pray immediately, because we are co-laborers with God, and God also said to us, whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. And then we must be the head and not the tail, young people. And I remembered, maths, for example, was my strong area. I studied, I don't even know if I slept an hour. I studied maths, psychology, philosophy, language, everything. 90s. I remember being sick after the exam, falling ill in Port of Spain, having to go home, couldn't even raise my head because I was pushing for this. But I want to add, there is something Sister White also says about studying. She said that if we keep studying, the blood can accumulate in your head. And she talks about exercise. So sometimes I would have an exam the next day. I'm going swimming. I made sure I continued swimming. Right? I continued doing my exercise. We're talking about physically. We're talking about spiritually. I prayed. I never started an exam without praying. A good 5 minutes. I want to give an example in mathematics. Remember, that's not my strong area. I was out of 500 and something people, 10 of us got distinctions. I remember sitting down and I said, Lord, I don't understand this. Well, anything happened? Nothing. Lord, I don't understand this. Okay, Lord, I pray. Then I said, Lord, I am not understanding what is in front of me. I need your help, Jesus. And I felt I was pulling Jesus' coattail. This is real. This is real. It's not TV. I started to write. It was about 13 lines. I got full marks for that question. I do not know what I wrote. What I'm saying is we might figure, okay, that we so more interested in ourselves than God is interested in us. God is interested in what we do. Right? When I finished college, I was like, that is enough education for me. Lo and behold, scholarship, university. Lord, all right, you sent it. I'm not doing anything beyond bachelor's. You come, okay, you have first class, you have to go to, you get a scholarship to go into MPhil. And so it kept going. I am saying to my young people, whether you come from a home with dedicated parents, we have the most dedicated parent there is. Amen. God our Father. Yes. And he is always more interested in who we are and what we become. I tell people, you know, we talk about worshiping God and we talk. God wants us to worship him in spirit and in truth. And when we have that connection with God, I mean, there's nothing, kind of dangerous statement, but there's nothing that God won't do for us if he sees us for our best. Amen. Right? So all our young persons here, Dr. Jackman said this morning, and I'm agreeing that they should be in the morning, because if education and salvation are one, why are we saying it to the handful of persons? If education and salvation are one, You know, we have this notion, and this is pervades the church, that God come in just now, why you studying? We are not studying just to make money. We are studying to be higher persons that God put us here to be. Right? God is, He's as high as the heavens are above the earth. So is God above us. And even if we reach to this, we are still far below. So let us try our best. Let us become the best that we can be, because we will be improving for eternity. All right? So go with that.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barbara Constance. Sister Beverly?
So I just want to add, beside the spiritual part, which is key, that our young people need to ensure that along with their parents, I mean, I'm an advocate for this, get adequate career counseling, map out your career path, and it cannot start when you reach a university. It has to be from elementary right up. We need to really help our young people map out what they want to be in life and guide them along that path. Additionally, mentorship is key, right? As Sister Constance was saying, you may not have that in your home, and I made the point before that you may be a first-generation student, so your parents, etc., never went to university. Seek out some alum from the institution you probably want to go to, or just generally someone from your church who is exposed to tertiary education, and let that person be your mentor, especially in the particular field. Like you may want to be an engineer. I'm just saying that. It could be anything else, an artist, an engineer, but look for someone in your church, if possible, that is in that particular field, and they could help guide you. So mentorship is key. And do your research, do your research, do your research. And for the workplace, ensure that while you're at university, that you are engaged in campus life so that you can develop strong leadership skills, and also take advantage of whatever soft skills training that your particular university provides, so that you would have a high degree of emotional intelligence and be more equipped to survive in the workplace.
Thank you very much, Sister Beverly, Mrs. Beverly Ellis. Talia?
Yes. So I'd like to add to that. You touched on a lot of the things that I will continue to just go a bit further into. I know that you were saying parents, but the reality is that a lot of parents don't have that formal education. You have a lot of persons coming from backgrounds where they are first-gen graduates within families. And so as a church, this is something that I speak about in my own peer groups within the church body. As a church, we need to have things where we have basically opportunities where younger persons are able to be exposed to career choices outside of medicine or law, or because there are a lot of other ways that you could be successful other than the basic things that all of our parents who in some instances where they don't have that certain level of education may not also be exposed to. So I think that as a church body, we also need to be able to facilitate those types of experiences for persons, because that wouldn't only assist you in getting into university, but then also being able to push through, because you entered university with an end in mind, and that definitely helps. In addition to that, when you're in university, something I think that assists with the work world, something that I'm already in the work world, but something that I have taken advantage of are co-curricular courses. So courses that look at workplace protocols, ethics, any type of experience that is able to enrich your working experience, your real life experience. I think that that's something that as a university student you can take to be able to exist, not just in the workplace, because it also extends within society and life.
Thank you very much, Sister Talia Phillip. Brother Darren Hernandez.
My closing thoughts. I want to say to any young person here, your past does not determine your future. we have many young people who they would have gone through situations where they would have failed. And I often tell my students, success is not an end goal, it's really the journey. Good? So your past doesn't determine your future. So if, and Brother Solomon, Jackman alluded to it, that if we fail, then you don't stay there. You rise again. One of the things I think our church can do is be the rallying or the support for our young people, some of whom going through hard times, difficult times. I'm going to say this. When I was growing up, I was the kind of child, I didn't care. In other words, I really didn't care about what people thought. I grew up as an only child, so whatever you think, that's your business. Good? So I grew up with that mentality. I didn't care if you knew what school I was going to. I didn't care all of those things. While I was at university, and I often tell my students that I bad mind bad. I had a lecturer tell me, you could never do bio while you're working. Biology degree and working don't go hand in hand. Leaving university, however, the same lecturer had to say, you turned out different, because now the working student showing up the students who are full-time getting all the A's, because the working student getting the A's, and so I just didn't care. But sometimes as a church, we can damage our young people. And I am one of those who, for my young people at my church, I am I am a warrior more or less. I can give you an example of a situation of my wife. So my wife is the kind of person, I was always the kind of naturally bright child. Good? So I'll say, so to me, if I get 60, 70, wasn't really because I didn't study, but because I just didn't feel to do that. My wife is the kind of person, if she don't get 99.9999%, she not happy. I mean to say literally. But she didn't realize her potential until later on in life, because something happened at Common Entrance. And it happened in her church, and our own people make our youths feel so bad about themselves that sometimes that kind of damage takes years to erase. It was only after my wife started her degree and started doing her things, and then she started to erase all of those years, because now she could see with the degree that she was doing why things happen. Because, okay, you didn't do Common Entrance, and where you passed was still in college, ha 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 ha. She could talk about it now. Good? But sometimes we damage our youths by the way we act. Okay, so a child doesn't do as well in church. Listen, you didn't get it this time, but don't worry. You could do better. You know something? You're so good at the maths, but I don't think I will help you out. Instead of pulling down, because we kind of have the crab in our crab and barrel mentality, that if my child is not the top, then it doesn't work like that. We're all going to get to the kingdom together. Right? So, here ends my contribution.
Thank you very much, Elder Darren Hernandez. Observe, I didn't say thank you very much yet, Elder Leslie Hislop. So the mic is yours once again. So I could say thank you very much.
Club.
I find you didn't respect my answer. Now, guys, let me just say this. I mean, I said it this afternoon at Aruka. We have to see what we want from the perspective of sacrifice. And why I'm saying that is this. Jesus made us and God made us and placed a particular value on us, which is why when we messed up, he sent God to give up godness, to accept death, so that we could get sorted out. Do we see our children, and when I'm saying our children here, our physical children, our church's children, as important enough to sacrifice for? Or are we prepared to sacrifice them to the devil? Because if we see them as important enough to sacrifice for, then nothing is too hard for us to do to ensure that their God-given potential is what they achieve. God wants us to be the best at whatever we do. And for some people, being the best requires more effort than others. For some people, being the best requires more support than others. Yes. But I think resident within the church, this community, this Seventh-day Adventist family, is everything that we need, with God's help, to ensure that all of our children are successes at whatever it is God has implanted in them to become.
Thank you.
Amen.
Elder Leslie Hislop.
Amen.
Amen.
This has been an awesome discussion.
Amen.
Now, my one piece without fries, she is not close to tertiary level education, but a number of things that was said here today, I know I can apply it even now as she prepares for secondary school. So even as we close, I just want to remind you of the tips of the recommendation from this esteemed panel. Let us encourage our children to have a personal relationship with God. Let's put God first in their lives, both by example and by encouragement. Let's get the appropriate career counseling, not just as they look to enter university or tertiary level education, but even before, so we can start to see how they can move into the area that God has given them. Let's look at mentorship, because some of us may not have gone to university. We may not really be as equipped as we can be as parents to help push and motivate our children. Let us help them get the right mentorship and do some research. Let's engage in campus life and the soft skill training to build the necessary competence for the workplace, to help as youths to build certain competencies for the workplace. At the church, let's have some programs that expose our young people to alternative career options, as a part from just the normal doctor, lawyer, teacher, etc. There are so many things that they should be doing based on their talents. Let us have that exposure. Let us also encourage them, our students, to participate in co-curricular courses such as ethics, etc., which will also help them prepare for the workplace. Remember that success is not just a goal. Success is a journey. And failure does not mean that you are a failure, but it certainly should motivate you to analyze and to move on. Do not let it be part of your identity. Remember, as a church people, we need to have positive reinforcement and encouragement for our students. We need to know what to say. Everybody can't pass for St. Joseph Convent, and it means nothing if someone else passes for something else. So let us be mindful of our words when we are encouraging our students. And let us see. Let us approach our children, let us approach their success from a sacrificial giving perspective. Do we see our children as important enough to sacrifice for them so they can be all that God wants us to be, or want them to be, mirroring what God would have done on the cross for us so that we can have eternal life? I want to thank you for being here. I want to especially thank our panelists. Let us put our hands together for them. Thank you very much for being with us till after 7. And I trust that God will continue to bless you as you impact the lives of young adults and youth everywhere. I want to call on our education leader, Sister Carleen, as she gives us a closing prayer as we close off our program.
So again, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you to all of you. Education, for me, is a priority regardless to whatever form it may undertake. I am one that truly believes in holistic education. And so, I learned a lot today. Even though I do my own research and I have a lot of beliefs in what you all said. I learned a lot in terms of guiding, youths and the younger ones, my charges, as to the relationship between education and redemption. And so I want to thank all of you once again. Let's all stand for a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for this week that has gone by into eternity. This week whereby we could have learned more about education, types of schooling, what is true education. We know above all that you, O God, are the true educator, and that once we place our lives into your hands, you will lead, guide, and direct us. We thank you, dear God, that we can rely on you, from whom all wisdom and knowledge overflows. And so as we go into a new week, we pray that all that was done this week, all that was said, all that was taught, and what different reminders, that we, oh God, will put it into practice so that we will not only look at education and redemption for ourselves, but for each and every person that we come in contact with. This be my prayer with thanksgiving in Jesus' name. Amen.